Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a deep dive into the world of college admissions.
I'm Mark Stucker, and I'm the founder and producer. Our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. We care deeply about your kid. We believe college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. We believe in being genuine and transparent. We are committed to covering a variety of topics, including the tough subjects. Thanks to your generosity, we're committed to providing a minimum of 10 hours of fresh, commercial-free content every month, with episodes every Monday and Thursday. We have a variety of co-hosts because we believe and value diverse perspectives. You're our listening family, and we get great joy every time we meet with you, as we do our best to give you tools so your students can soar and reach their limitless potential. This week in the news, Matt Carpenter is back, and it's the final part 3 of 3. Matt is the co-founder of College Aid Pro, and we're talking about how to appeal an aid award. We focus a lot on the mechanics this time, and we really focus on two different ways of appealing, the need-based appeal and the competitor appeal. And then we got a special treat for you for a question from a listener. We have a special guest, Michelle Silbernagle, who's from the Pacific Northwest. She is an IEC. She is the co-director of Counselors Connect, along with myself. And we have a question from a listener from Arizona, an IEC who wants to know, how can I get on these fly-ins that I hear you talk about? And Michelle's done a lot of the fly-ins, more so than many of the people that I know. So I've asked her if she could join me for a robust discussion. And then we'll have part 2 of 3 with Kev Sanders, who's doing a spotlight for us on the University of Utah. Listen and enjoy. So friends, before we transition to you hearing from Matt, I wanted to just say a few more follow-up things on the conversation that Carter and I had around early decision the last 3 weeks. So right now, there's really 4 types of students. You can take all the students and categorize them into 4 buckets. One would be students who either are not going to college or they're not sure if they're going to college. So that's group number 1. Then we're going to go all the way to the other side of the continuum. So going to be students who've applied early decision and they've gotten in and they know where they're going. Would have been my oldest daughter, Karis. That would have been Sean's daughter as well, who called in and left a message for us. But that's actually less than 1% right now. I know I said 1% last week, but that was including early decision 2. About 40,000 students in the country get in through ED1 or early decision 2. ED2 or early decision 2 is a second round of binding applications, which happens between January 1st and mid-January. I want to talk a little bit about the 2 groups in the middle. The one group Lisa and I talked about last week, that's the group that's disappointed, feeling some despair, some despondency, some disconsolate feelings because, as the kids like to say, they shot their shot and it didn't work out for them. So that would be the group 3. And it's really the 4th group I just want to say something about because every year I have conversations with group number 4. So group number 4 is the student and or parent that did not apply early to a binding program and is wondering if they made a mistake. I field calls every year from people in that group. Normally, they are either in affluent suburbs where a lot of kids do apply ED, especially on the East Coast. Now, a lot of times I will talk about Northern Virginia all the way up to New England because that's where that group's most pronounced, from the Northern Virginia suburbs all the way up to New England. But there are other pockets as well, including South Florida. It's a lot of ED pressure in South Florida, for sure, and other parts of Florida. And then certain pockets in the Midwest, certainly in the North Shore of Chicago. And really, you've got it everywhere throughout the country where you have independent schools and pockets of wealth. You just do, whether that's the Seattle area, certainly LA area. I'm not going to mention all the areas. But anyway, in that group, they're seeing a lot of kids that did apply ED that got in. You know, they just did because for lots of different reasons, which I won't go into right now. And they're sometimes wondering, I have these conversations, parents are wondering, snap, did I do the best thing? Did I make the best decision for my student? Students are wondering, they're seeing other kids get in and this can add to their stress. Wow, what's going to happen to me? And I just want to say it's going to be okay. There are 4 really good reasons why applying an early decision to a binding program may not make sense. And once again, 99% of people don't do that. One reason is you just want to wait because you know that 6 months from now, I really feel I'm going to be able to make a better decision. Maybe you've looked at how you've evolved and changed. You started out in this process looking for big schools. Now you're looking at small, looking at one part of the country. Now you're looking at another part of the country. Had your idea on one major. Maybe it's another major. And you're like, snap, I'm changing a lot. So I just think in 6 months, I'll have a better vantage point and I'll be able to make a better decision. There's another group that just doesn't have a clear first choice. So they're like, I'm not going to make a binding commitment when I kind of really don't have one school that's emerged for me, over the others. We've talked a lot about the need to see how much I'm going to actually pay so you can take financial fit into consideration. I'm just not at a place where I can afford to commit to a school that's going to be 90 or 100 grand with 5% increases over the next 4 years. That could be the third group. I just need to be able to compare the financial aid offers. And then there's a fourth group they're just really curious. And they want to know I just want to see what schools liked me for who I am without me having to make a binding early decision commitment to them. Now, I've been really honest. It's about 100 to 150 schools in this country that will make it harder for you to get in, and in some cases, significantly harder. But the point is, it's going to be okay. This week, I heard from a lot of people who made that decision, and they got really good news, and they felt so validated and so relieved. But there's still some that haven't heard. Maybe they didn't apply to schools yet. Most of the schools actually do not reveal their decisions in mid-December, whether it's early action. And so if you're hanging in there and you're kind of worrying and you're seeing people around you and they're celebrating, most of the time, the people that are hurting go into secret, and the people that are celebrating, they herald it. Just know it's going to be okay. And I want to play a message that came in from a listener, and hopefully it will encourage you.
Hi, this is Kate from New Jersey. I'm a parent, and I've called in before, so thank you again for all the great work y'all have done and continue to do. I just wanted to say a quick thank you for the recent conversations about early decision. We live in one of those communities where it feels like everybody is doing early decision, and my daughter chose not to. She's a senior now. And she chose not to because she really doesn't have a favorite. She's using this year in part to take her list, which has about 10 schools on it, and as the schools that she applied to, figure out where she gets in, and then, use this year and continue taking classes in her senior year to help her figure out what she wants to study and where she wants to be. She was not ready to say, this is my absolute favorite, but it is very hard watching her see friends who are already in and committed and see that their journey is over, where she still has many months to go. So thank you for the very balanced discussion about it. It made us feel more secure in our decision to support her and not feel like she has to make a decision. Thank you so much.
Okay, friends, let's transition to Matt Carpenter, breaking down 8 awards.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Okay, friends, we pack a lot in to this final segment with Matt Carpenter, co-founder of College Aid Pro, Chief Revenue Officer of College Aid Pro, as we're trying to give you some tips on how to get the absolute best financial aid award from a college. Matt and I continue with our conversation about the need-based appeal. I share a story about how some colleges are not transparent when it comes to home equity. Matt gives a shout out to a college that does a great job if your income changes from the base year. Matt and I talk about the easiest way to win a need-based appeal. Matt discusses whether it is best to make a specific ask versus a general ask when appealing for more money. Matt and I discuss the importance of tone when you appeal. Matt tells our listeners don't use the N-word, but you have to listen to find out what the N-word is. Matt and I discuss the competitor appeal. And Matt gives some good tips for who's a good school for you to use when it comes to the competitor appeal. Matt shares whether he recommends you send the paperwork from one school, no schools, or a bunch of schools to the school that you're trying to get more money from. Might give some more details of what the appeal meeting with the financial aid officer looks like. Matt and I talk about whether the student or the parent should be the one initiating the appeal process. Matt and I discuss whether colleges lead with their best financial offer in the early decision round. And finally, Matt closes out with some great resources and a special offer for our listeners. Listen and enjoy. You know, one thing that I've been pushing for is more transparency on home equity, because some people will share it and some of them won't share. I mean, I had a lunch with a highly selective East Coast school, and normally after lunch, you know, you've kind of built a little bit of rapport, and it's a, you know, senior level financial person. And then I just asked him, I'm like, yeah, what's your home equity multiplier? Is it 1.2? Is it 2? Is it 3.0? 4.0? No multiplier. So listeners, basically what I'm referring to is what some schools do in order to protect you from having a low income but really, really high assets, especially with your home. Let's say you have two teachers in California, and let's say they each make 90,000, so you make 180. But you bought a house at 400,000 that's now worth like 1.4 million. So if they just go off the asset formula, it look like you have $1 million in assets. And if they take 5% of that plus your income, they could turn around and say your income's 180. And you know what? You don't qualify for 8 here because, you know, we're looking at your assets and we feel you should be able to pay 80. And you're like, how can I pay 80 when I make 180 and I'm in an expensive place? So what some schools do is they put a cap. So I'll just keep it simple. If it was a two-time multiplier, then that 180,000 times 2 would be 360, and you would only pay the 5% on that 360. So that'd be like 18K instead of like 50 or 60K. And anyway, and so I said to him, like, you know, what's your multiplier? Because I want to know, like, I want to make sure I'm recommending families, and some families have really high home equity, and you know, I was kind of told that's, hey, you know, that's kind of proprietary. Is that your experience, or do you?
It's disappointing, right? And again, same thing. There's a range. Some schools will be transparent, right, and they will say, hey, here's how we evaluate home equity. I would say it's probably more common that, again, the colleges loves this word proprietary, right? Which again is just, this is our, you know, black box here, and we don't want. We like to keep it that way, right? So, which again is disadvantage consumers, to your point.
You know, one area, listeners, where you'll see wide disparity is what is a college's policy if the income goes down from the base year. So the base year is like 2 years before the year your student enrolls, right? So if you've got a student class of 2027, starting college fall 2027, 2025 is that year that they're going to use to figure out, you know, your student aid index, looking at, you know, income and assets. But what if your income goes down in 2026 or 2027? Like, nobody's living off 2025 income. That's a really good thing for you to find out what the school's policy is on that, because I found some of the most generous schools have a policy of kind of, it is what it is, and we'll look at it the next year. You won't get the benefit this year, but it'll redound to your benefit the following year. And then others like totally understand you're not living off 2025 income, so they'll have whatever they need for their proof, usually 2026 tax returns, 2027 income statements. That's an area where I see like aid awards policies are all over the place, even from selective schools.
That's right. And I'll call out one on the positive side, Wash U in St. Louis.
Yes, they're great at that.
Yeah, they'll say, hey, you make less now? Great. We'll just look at what you make now, right? You have other colleges that, to your point, opposite end of the spectrum. Sorry, brother. We're going with what you made in 2025, and we don't care that it's, significantly more than you make now. And then there's a bunch that are somewhere in between. They say, hey, we'll split the difference, right?
Yeah.
Or something.
No, they're all over. Yeah, Michael Runowitz, we've had him on the podcast before. He's over that office. They're really clear. They're really like, hey, come on. You're not living off 2025 income anymore. They're great. But then, but it's also hard because like Davidson, where my oldest daughter went, like Davidson, at least as of a couple of years ago, they didn't make adjustments on that. But then they're one of they were the second school to Princeton to meet full demonstrated need with no loan. So, sometimes it's hard to be critical because there's only so much money and you're choosing to flip all of the federal direct loans into grants, like that's a big expense too. So, Emory told me we would need 4.7% more money if we did that, because nobody comes to us when their income goes up.
Sure.
Nobody comes when their income goes up. So they only come when their income goes down. So, but that's an example of how like you got to, kind of know the individual policies of the schools.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I find on need-based appeals, the easiest ones to win is clear proof of income, a clear proof of income change, for a school that does say that they meet full need. If they don't say they meet full need, then they won't do it because they've built gapping into their protocol.
Agreed. I mean, look, if you have had a change, and obviously you can document that, most, again, private schools specifically are going to work with you there, at least to an extent, right? I think the bigger challenge, right, and those are like somewhat obvious. Like I think most families, even if you don't know anything about this, might be like, well, hey, I lost my job. Like I need more help now, right? It's, how do we do better with need-based appeals? We don't necessarily have some clear ammunition like that, right? Is the bigger challenge.
Yeah, and some of them just will do it because they just want the kid enough, especially if it's not too much. You come in expecting $30K, like good luck with that.
Exactly.
But if you're, do you recommend usually a specific ask? Like, hey, like we're like 5,000 away. If you could come up with 5,000, I think we could make it work. Do you generally recommend that?
Yes. Generally speaking, yes. And I think that is best practice of like, let me anchor to something, right? Like help, don't just say, give me more money, right? Now, again, we've had cases where it'd be like, we want $70,000 more and we'll get it because that you Middlebury, you Boston College are not supposed to count step parent income and assets because you use the institutional methodology, but you did. So we know we should get 70,000 more, right? Or in some cases even more than that. Outrageous number, and they'll do it, right? Because they got caught, essentially.
And is that usually a flaw in their calculator? Their calculator hasn't matched their own philosophy?
Well, I mean, look, I think that is one where it says, in my opinion, okay, I have not been in those rooms. I did not package those families. But that is one where it's like these people are probably none the wiser that they're probably going to assume we count step parent income and step parent has a high income and a lot of resources and whatever. And we're going to package them based on that. How are they going to know how to call us on that? They don't know what we should be doing. Yeah. Right. So
do you find it's really important that you coach your families? Like, hey, you catch more. What's it saying? You catch more flies with oil than vinegar? Is that the saying or something like that?
I think what is it? Honey works better than
honey, oil. I knew it didn't sound right. What are you talking about? Oil, honey than vinegar? Like, listen, don't be coming off entitled. Like, are you going to negotiate with me?
I mean, look, another important tip, and I'm glad you used that word, is don't use the word negotiate. That's exactly what we're doing. That could be the end of the conversation. We're appealing, right?
I tell people that's like nail on a chalkboard. I'm surprised sometimes. I'll listen to some other podcasts, sometimes even with some financial aid people, and they'll use that term. I've always that's an immediate turn off. They don't like to think of themselves as used car salespeople.
Exactly. It's and that's really important to them in the vernacular. Actually, it really does matter there, but so does the tone, right? And again, I will, my buddy, I mentioned him earlier, Ryan Callahan, who's at Harvard now, like, because he'll coach our team a lot, right? And just be like, guys, like, think about it from my perspective. If you're coming in here and you're being a jerk, I'm looking at you going, do I want to deal with this person for the next 4 years?
Yeah.
No, I do not. Like when you come in here saying, I'm trying to figure out a way to make this happen for my kid, and that's kind of genuine tone comes off. Now I'm motivated to try to help you make it happen for your kid, right? So I think the tone absolutely matters. Like, yes, the X's and O's and how sophisticated your case is absolutely going to matter, but the tone matters as well, right? And again, if you're a jerk, you're just, again, these people don't want to deal with you for 4 years.
Matt, any tips for the competitor appeal? That's a totally different type of appeal.
Yeah.
There's schools like Cornell that literally put on their website, like, we'll match these schools.
That's right.
Of course, they tend to be very selective schools that are at least their selectivity equal.
Yeah.
And but not everybody does it. But, there are quite a few that do. Any tips on the competitor appeal?
Yeah, most do, right? And oftentimes the language we use is that, like, hey, your odds at a successful appeal starts before you've even decided where you want to apply to college, right? Because to your point, we are as we have our, we're looking kind of through our financial lens first with our families. If they've already got like a list of schools identified, we just want to make sure there's leverage there. And how we describe that is like, are there competitors there? If you tell me my top choice is Northeastern University, but you hated BU, guess what? I'm going to make you apply to BU because we're going to get more money out of Northeastern as a result, right? Every college has their group of schools that they compete with, right? And to your point, the Cornells, and they're not alone, they're pretty transparent. Like, hey, if you get a better offer from these schools, let us know because we'll match it. We have other colleges that will say on their website, we don't match other schools. Oftentimes that's not the case, right? Right. We find that that's just kind of a preemptive strike by them. Don't even try to come back with us with this offer. But yeah, and I think, and we get the question all the time, like, well, how are we supposed to know who competes with who? Obviously, there's some nuance there, but to me, the easiest cheat code there, what athletic conference do they play in? Right. The Ivy League doesn't just compete with one another on the football field. Of course, they do academically as well. Right. And obviously, I'm using an example of the Ivy League, but I can kind of do that across the board. Obviously, that is an imperfect science. But if you want to get a rough idea, it's a good place to start.
Yeah, and another good idea is similar acceptance rate, similar average SATs, and similar type of college.
That's right. Yeah, I'll say all the time, like, hey, if you really liked Oberlin, well, okay, Oberlin's a smaller liberal arts school in the Midwest. Okay, well, so is Kenyon, right? And then
right.
Those are the like. So that's another fair way to start to think about who might be some good competition that I can help.
And do you find for the competitor peel, do you recommend sending copies of other actual awards? Like, I just want you to kind of see how some other schools are assessing my need that are a little different. Like some people say, send them 3 or 4. And then some of them are like, well, if you send them 3 or 4, it doesn't look like you're really picking the school because you want to pick them. Looks like you're just shopping around. So send them 1, maybe 2. Don't send the whole batch. What are your thoughts on that?
Our general recommendation is 1, and we send the receipts. Right, here you go. As you can see, we're trying to make this really big decision as a family. You guys are the first choice. Kenyon, you can see Oberlin is our kind of a close second. We want a way to make this work, but as you can see, Oberlin gave us 10,000 more, Kenyon, or however I said it. But that's the premise, right? And I think and most schools, again, not always, but most schools are going to need or want that documentation. So we like to get out ahead of it and say, here's the deal. As you can see, this is what we're looking at as we're having this conversation on the kitchen table, and we want to just include you, into what we're seeing.
Do you generally recommend, Matt, trying to set up a Zoom call with a financial aid person on this? Because this is going to be need-based stuff. This isn't merit. We're in the need-based category. Yeah. Well, no, actually, we're talking, it depends. The competitor stuff would be merit-based.
Right. Usually, right? No, it doesn't necessarily have to be. But hey, look, I think we all know it's harder to say no to people face-to-face. It's second hardest to say no to people, virtually face-to-face. It's kind of easy, and then phone, and then, obviously over email, kind of the easiest to say no. So we always recommend you're going to tour these schools. You're going to, if you can get face-to-face, that is, of course, it's not always possible, right? Well, I would want to start there. I would send we recommend that order of operation is send your appeal before and then ask to meet face-to-face, kind of like right before. Because oftentimes if we meet face-to-face and we say, hey, I'd like to, ask for XYZ, they're going to say, great, message received, put this in writing. When you get back home, we'll take a look. And again, as opposed to we've already checked that box and now, I'm sitting across the desk from you. It's just harder to say no.
No, you're so right, because sometimes it's worth saying, hey, I can drive by and come and visit you in person. It may be worth a couple-hour drive to save a lot of money, right? And a lot of these awards are renewable for 4 years. So I always tell people, you got to think, okay, if it's renewable for 4 years and then this is after-tax money, think about how much earnings you have to make that up. I mean, even if let's say it's 3,000, well, 3 times 4 is 12. And then 12 could be 20 in earnings to get to 12. So, okay, it might just look like 3, but 3 is really 20. That's how I try to get people to think. Another tip on that, a lot of these schools on these admitted student visit programs, where we used to call them all hands on deck events. Nobody could really take, PTO, paid time off on those. Like the financial aid office is open. And so that's a good time. Like if you're going back to an administrative visit program, especially if you can maybe set it up in advance. But a lot of times that those financial aid people are there. Sometimes it's even part of the protocol of the day, like financial aid's over there. If you have any questions about that, go over and see them.
Yep.
That could be an opportunity to do it face-to-face. Cool.
100%.
So Matt, is there anything we haven't talked about that as we wind down that, you kind of want to share?
A million things, Mark, but there's this, we scratch the surface in this whole world. But I mean, one just other note to add, right? I think I said that we want the parents. It usually makes sense for them to lead the conversation. Financial aid appeals. I don't know what your experience was, when you used to be employed there, but in my experience, these admissions counselors specifically, they want to hear from the students. They want to hear why they want to go to school. They want to hear that they are invested in this thing and are trying to make it happen. So, I think it's, and our data shows this, less effective when it's the parents that are the loudest voice in the room asking for more scholarship money on behalf of their kids. So
I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's what I coach as well. Like I have the student take the initiative, copy the parents on it. Say I'd like to have a meeting with my parents there, because especially when it's need-based, you are going to start getting into income and asset type stuff that's way over the student's head. But I've had financial aid people tell me that, look, I'm in it to help the student, and there's just something that just pulls on my heartstrings when the kid reaches out to me, and it, it's human nature, right? And then also, you kind of know that the kid wants it too. Like you don't have to have it in your back of the mind. Is this something the parent wants, but the kid doesn't want? So I kind of try to have the kid take that initiative initially, but copy the parents and say the parents are going to be at the meeting, because a lot of the stuff they're going to get into are going to be things that the kid won't be able to answer. But at least it signals that the kid really wants to go.
And I also think, I tell parents all the time too, what an unbelievable kind of life lesson to be involved with in some capacity, advocating for yourself, trying to get, a better deal, right? I mean, that's something that we'll use for the rest of our life. It's great to build that muscle as a 17, 18-year-old and get that experience, even if the end result is not what we want it to be. Like, great, we participated in that as a student. So I guess in closing, Mark, I would say, going back to what I opened with a little bit, the great news here is that college is still affordable for everybody, right? The hard part is just figuring out, okay, well, what is the right path for my kid, for my family? And again, that's what we are up against, because it's not as easy as we all want it to be, but it is still that. It's still, as much as like I'm knocking colleges a little bit today, and it's still like the best experience of most of our lives, those of us that we're fortunate enough to do it. And, I still think it's one of the best things that we have in our country is our college system. So yes, I am constantly, talking trash on these guys, but I still am such a believer that for a lot of people, it's not for everybody, but for a lot of people, it's just an unbelievable, almost rite of passage that we have here in our country. So, I guess I'll end on a soft note there, Mark.
No, I think it's important, because I think a lot of colleges, they're like someone who makes $5,000 a month, but their bills are $7,000. So they're like, how can I make my $5,000 that I earn pay $7,000? So the little things like gapping or not leading with your best offer, it's something any of us would do if we were in that situation. But because you and I are more on the role of we're advocates for the consumer, we're trying to let people know these are some of the rights that you have, and these are some of the strategies and the tactics that you can do to not have the financial piece be as onerous on your family. So that's the role that we see ourselves sitting in. I really don't do it in judgment of colleges unless I see something that's just really egregious, and it's more the misleading stuff. Like I don't like it if you're really putting pressure on kids to apply ED and knowing that especially if you're gonna not give them the greatest package. There are a lot of schools that do give good packages in ED, like Andy Strickler's a co-host on our podcast. He's a Connecticut College VP of enrollment there. He was like, my name is Mud if word gets out that I'm given a different offer ED versus the regular decision. Like high school counselors aren't going to be referring me. anymore. And so there are a lot of schools that I find do the right thing. Now, that doesn't mean there's still not an appeal lane there for this person that knows how to use it.
Sure.
But I don't find, it's a widespread practice to say, okay, this kid's EDing, so this kid's in the bag. So we're going to give them a totally different offer than what we would give in regular decision. That word gets out on that and you're toast.
Agreed. And again, I don't think that's necessarily common practice where it's like we're going to give you 0 ED. We would have given you 30 if it was regular decision. We don't see evidence of that.
But what you do is you lose your ability to do the competitor aid award leverage. Like you don't have the 3 to 4 offers that you can come to them with and use it if you're trying to ask them to reevaluate an aid award, which is the language I use.
Right.
I tell people to use or use professional judgment or reevaluate an aid award. People use the N word all the time in negotiate. You need to get that out of your vocab.
You really do. And it's is that what you're doing? Yes, but just lose it, right? To your
yes.
Point.
Yeah. Matt, this has been awesome. Thank you for everything you're doing. Appreciate all the support. And it's been fun. I was on your podcast recently. I had fun interviewing with Peg and try to support you and what you're doing. And you don't have to go on the hot seat. That's a first-time thing. You went on it first time. You survived it.
Okay. All right. Wow. Look, always a pleasure. We're always rooting for you. We love having you as a collaborator, partner, whatever you want to say. And if you want to, I know we have anybody that engages with our stuff, we have a coupon code if you want me to share that or not.
Yeah. Do you know it off the top of your head? If not, tell me and I'll
Stucker20. So Stucker20, if you want to use any of our stuff, it's 20% off anything. If you decide to engage us, so use that coupon code Stucker20.
Yeah, that could save you some nice money there. So there you go. Thanks, Matt, for throwing that out there. Why don't you also close by just sharing the website and sharing the podcast?
Yeah, collegeaidpro.com, or you can, if you just want to go to our technology, that's mycap.collegeaidpro.com. And the podcast, Old College Try. So give us a shot if you want to listen to Mark. We're not Mark. He's the, he sets the bar. He sets the standard. We're still learning here, but, that's, if you want to come down in the minor leagues, check us out, Old College Try.
There's another thing you guys do. I'd love for you to talk about it because there used to be a decent one out there from College Board, but they got rid of it. You've got a really great aid award comparison tool.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell our listeners about this? This is something everyone who is hoping to not pay full sticker price or everyone who wants to know the real cost of college should be using because of the fact that you can't have confidence that one aid award is going to be comprehensive. And why don't you close with that? I think that's important for our listeners to know. That's a tool I tell all our listeners to use. All the personal clients to use.
So within our platform, mycap.collegeaidpro.com, as you're being accepted into these colleges and getting your financial aid award letters, right, you upload them there. And again, number one, we help you translate them because it's just confusing oftentimes what the brass tacks is. What am I actually paying to go to your school? What's a loan versus merit versus need, right? And then we tell you again, did you get a good deal? We will tell you like, hey, this is what you should expect at Penn State. That's the deal, right? Take it or leave it, kind of. It doesn't mean don't appeal, but your expectations has been set versus, hey, no, you've been under awarded and you've been under awarded by X amount. So when you go back, you should be asking for this amount, and here's why.
Yeah, and you can really do true apples for apples, oranges for oranges comparisons. One other thing I'll shout out, I'm going to shout out Kristen, a mom I'm working with in the Southeast. She loves the webinars that you have built into your system when people go into the resources. And in fact, I'd sent her one that I thought would be pretty cool. It was a Road to College CSS profile one. And she's like, oh, I've already seen it. Like that was like embedded in the resources tab in with College Aid Pro.
Yeah. There's some good stuff in there, line by line through the FAFSA, through the CSS profile. I mean, we're talking about this stuff, Mark, as you know, every day, all day, every day. We got this great team of experts with different voices and perspectives, et cetera. So yeah, we try to have all of that, housed within the platform. So if you want to see stuff live, great. If not, go back into the archives and check it out.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, Matt, and got to have you guys on at least once a year because there's always something going on in the world of financial aid. So keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you.
Right back at you.
All right, friends, it's time for our question from a listener, and it'll be answered by my co-director of Counselors Connect, Michelle Silvernagle from the Pacific Northwest.
And now it's time for a question from one of our listeners.
Friends, we have a guest here today joining me to help answer this question from a listener. Welcome to the Your College Bound Kid podcast, Michelle Silvernagle.
Hi, everyone. As Mark said, I'm Michelle Silvernagle. I'm an IEC in the Seattle area, and I am one of the co-founders with Mark on the Counselors Connect. So if you're a member of that community, I help him as he coordinates all of those events.
Yeah, and the reason why I reached out to Michelle is because we have a question from a listener that came in from an IEC. And just from my conversations with Michelle, I felt she'd be a really good person to join me and answer the question that got sent in. So we're going to play the question, and then Michelle, take it where you want to go and share your thoughts, and then I'll chime in with some of my thoughts.
Hi, Mark. My name is Kara, and I am an independent education consultant in Scottsdale, Arizona. I just wanted to thank you for all the wonderful information that you share. Listening to your podcast makes me better at my job, and I'm so grateful for all the up-to-date information on what's going on in higher ed. I do have a question that I'm hoping you might be able to answer. I hear you talk about fly-ins that universities do. I assume that's mostly for school-based counselors, but I would love to know, as someone who's independent, how I could get on a list or get invited to some of those kind of events. I have not seen as many universities in person as I would like to, and I would love an opportunity to get invited to see different schools. I don't know how they make those decisions or if those invites are really just for school-based counselors, but any advice that you have on that, I would be grateful to hear. Thank you so much for everything you do, and I look forward to having my question answered. Thank you.
So Kara has an excellent question. And it's one that I remember having myself when I first started out as an IEC many years ago, because the best way to get to know a college, as Mark has said many times on the podcast, is to get your feet on the ground. And that can be expensive. And one of the things Kara asked is if this is something that is primarily for school-based counselors. And while there are specific fly-ins that are really just focused on school-based counselors, and Mark, I'm sure you can name those in a moment, there are several colleges who are more than happy to have IECs come visit their colleges. Often these fly-ins will be a combination event with some IECs and some school-based counselors. Sometimes it might be an IEC-only event. And I would say that these are a really budget-friendly way of getting to know the colleges, because oftentimes they pay for part of the cost of the visit. They might provide a travel stipend where they pay for part of the airfare, or you might need to get yourself to the event and then they pay for the hotel and the busing to and from. It really depends on the fly-in. I've had some great experiences though where most of it has been picked up. And what's really great about them is that you can tack on another college visit or two if you're near other locations. And most of the colleges are amenable to that. They understand that you might be doing that. You may not be going directly to and from their school. So in terms of how to get invited, it's really all about relationship building. And if you're an IEC and you're not a member of one of the professional associations, I would say start off by doing that, because not only will you get a ton of professional development opportunities, but you're going to start engaging with people, both who have been on fly-ins and who will be offering them. So you may have already heard from your colleagues who've been on these fly-ins. One of the great ways is these are often by invitation only. And so if you know someone who went on a fly-in, you could mention to them that you'd be interested in going to that and ask them who their contact person was, because typically that fly-in coordinator for a particular college that's their main role. They might also be a regional admissions rep, but they typically have the role of being in charge of fly-ins. And so, at least that's in my experience. Mark might know something different. And so anyways, if you get that name, you can reach out to them and indicate your interest, or sometimes, and I also have had colleagues, I'd say, hey, listen, that's a fantastic fly-in. If you have the opportunity, please let them know that I would be a happy person, be happy to be on their list of those considered in the future. And often they can do that because that individual might follow up with a thank you regarding the fly-in, and they can say, by the way, I have this colleague who would be an excellent person to attend your event, and explain why. So that's one side of the page. The other side for professional associations is that if you attend, like, for example, an IECA or a HECA or even a NACAC is fabulous, a NACAC conference, you are in the room with admissions reps. And they all have a college fair at some point during these events. And we all know what that is, but you go to those booths where you are most interested, visiting the college representatives of the colleges that you're most interested in. And of course, you're going to have thoughtful questions that are not superficial, like we all tell our students. But one of your questions could be is, are you ever in the area? I'd love to connect with you if you are. And also, do you ever have an opportunity for counselors to come visit? And if the response is yes, you definitely ask if you could get on that list. And that is the first step. So we have professional conferences. There are other really strong ways to make connections, and that would be joining your local ACAC. So there's the National Association of Regional Admission Counselors, and they will often meet, I don't know, usually in the fall or spring, once or twice a year. And they will invite counselors if you are on their list of members attending. And it's usually an update of some sort of what's going on in the regional colleges. And they usually do what we call a speed dating part of it. So it's a luncheon or a breakfast. And then there's a presentation where there's maybe 25 regional reps from across the country representing their colleges. And they will do a speed dating, 1 to 2 minutes. This is what's going on. And I would say maybe 5 of those 25 will say, and we have a counselor fly-in. Quickly note that information down. And then after the event, they will do like a quick little mini fair, hit that table up, indicate your interest, because they are right there telling you we have a fly-in. So I have gone, I don't know, probably 10 fly-in events as a result of attending those mini ACACs. So it's called the National Association of Regional Admission Counselors. You can Google it. Not every single region is listed on that page. And so, Kara, I'm going to say Arizona doesn't have a live link. I will say this, though. You can click through and look at the other regions. So the Rocky Mountain Association of College Admissions Counselors, they have every year a bus tour. So it's still a really great way to attend. It's not a full free paid airfare sort of event. You have to get yourself to the Rocky Mountain location. Usually it's Colorado. And I think it's the Wild West bus tour is what they call it, for example. And then you get yourself to Colorado. And once you're there, you're on the bus with other counselors, and they take you from college to college to college for maybe $300 or so. And it's a fabulous way. So there are lots of schools. Montana has one, Indiana. There's several of these events across the country. And then there's a whole list that we could list off. I don't know if you want us to do that, Mark. To list off the different types of
let's come back to that. That was great, Michelle, is just an intro. So, I had to think really hard about this question because I've been doing this for 25 years and I've been an independent for 15 years, but for 12 of those 15 years, I was also school-based. So I've only been an independent for 3 years. So I was thinking about all of the fly-ins that I've had, and I've done a ton of them, but most of them was when I was also school-based. And then I had to look back and think, okay, was that exclusively for school-based? Because there are some that are exclusively for school-based. And you will tend to find the more you go up I'm adopting Andy's language here, the food chain. The more you go up the selectivity food chain, the more they tend to be only for school-based. I remember having lunch with a Stanford rep at a Harvard training program I went to, and I was asking him about this, like, why do you guys not, do anything? And and one of the points he brought out is the media would have an absolute field day on us. Like we'd be perceived as privileging the privileged. That is such a New York Times article ready to be written. So we just have to be careful. So some of them are school-based only, but there are a lot out there that are not. In the last 3 years, I've done a lot. In fact, literally, Michelle and I are sitting here recording this on a Monday, and on Friday, I got invited to do one that I committed to. So I'll be at Lynn University, 25th through 28th. They're like, we have one spot left. Do you want to grab it? I snagged it. February. I think of others I've done. College of Worcester. They got a grant from a donor exclusively for IEC fly-ins. Rhodes, Center. There's others I've done. But I've thought about how did I get all of them? And, we don't, for these questions for a listener, we don't most of the time, we don't really talk ahead of time. We just come in here and just sort of, honestly share our experience, and we feed off of each other. So the number one thing I wanted to mention, Michelle hit it right out of the gate, which is it's relationship building and networking. Like that's how I've gotten all of mine. They're all relationship building and networking. And there are some things you can do. One of them is a lot of schools will have like counselor lists, and you can get on the counselor email list. That's kind of a good way if they're doing it more generically. But because these are really expensive for schools, a lot of times, like Michelle said, they might be invitation only, or I've done them where I've been asked to nominate people. And so all those ideas that she had, like going to the ACACs or asking people at a fair, those are really, really great ways. Or asking someone who who's done one. I was just thinking, this just popped in my head, Michelle, and our Counselor Connect meeting, we really need to do it. We need to do a session on this. This would be a great breakout session. Because the school-based counselors, it would work for everybody, school-based, CBO, and IECs. And we could talk about a lot of them and get more into the weeds. So let's, you and I can talk about that offline. But I know this is a session that would be of interest. So yeah, all of those ways are ways. Now, here's one thing I will say. They are on the increase. Like I'm planning one right now for Redlands. I'm planning one with their VP. And I told her when I was there, I'm like, you guys need to do one. And she said, will you help me plan it? I'm like, absolutely. So I'm helping plan one for her for 2026. Same for Trinity as well in San Antonio. So they're out there and they're growing because, we know, I'm not going to repeat it a million times. You guys have heard it over and over, right? Enrollment cliff, birth dearth, increased apps, more competition. Like it feels to me like just in the last 15 years, but 10 and even more of the last 5, a lot of sort of the moderately selective schools, like I'm talking about pretty selective schools, like a range. They've really realized, snap, these IECs are like a great network for us. Like they work with a lot of students. They're oftentimes reaching people in a way school-based counselors are not reaching them. I'll just be honest. A lot of times people can pay, and that helps with their net tuition revenue. And so, sure, these schools want socioeconomic diversity, but they also need people that can pay, and a higher percentage of people can pay that work with IECs. I don't want to make it sound like you need to be wealthy to work with an IEC, but it's just a fact. A higher percentage of people that are full pay or high pay, come from IECs. And then there's been a tremendous growth of IECs. So I have talked to many schools over the years that have said things like, we're about to start one, or we didn't know if it was going to be successful. And we did it. I'm surprised how much interest there was. So this is definitely something that has momentum. The old mindset was very anti-IEC all the way back to at NACAC, you had to have a different badge. And then, I could go on and on about the history. Susan would be the best one to talk about the history on our team. But there's just been a tremendous change of receptivity to working with IECs from school-based. And while you're not going to get it, I'm telling you, like the Georgetowns and the Princetons and places like that, they're not going to pay for an IEC to fly in. But sometimes they'll work with you off the record, even if their official policy is not to do it. It's all about relationship building. It's all about networking. ask people who have done them if they can nominate you. Like, I do that for people. I'll go on one, and then I'll reach out to, the person who sponsored it and say, I've got somebody who would be really great. And they almost always get invited. So, yeah, I think it's a great question that you're asking. And Michelle's right. There's no better way to learn about it. And I'll tell you the history so our listeners may remember this. I said I'm going to do an event in South Florida. So I was already going to do your college bound kid reception in South Florida. And Lynn is in Boca Raton. So I just accepted this. And then I knew they would say yes, but you still have to ask. So what happens is some of them pay for everything. Like this one pays for everything. All airfare, hotels, pick you up at the, shuttle at the airport. Some of them, like I did one for the Northwest 5, that group out your way, Portland, Seattle, Oregon and Washington schools. That one made me pay $500 toward my airfare. But you think about it, like, okay, it was like a 7-day trip. So they're covering all your transportation, shuttling you all over. There's a lot of driving there, like just going from Puget Sound to Whitman. It was like 4.5 hours, and you're shuttling all around Portland. It was a lot of driving. So they're paying for the buses, and then they're paying for your hotels, and they're paying for your meals. Like, it's not bad, actually. So some of them are completely free. Most of the ones I've done have been completely free, but there are a couple that make you pay a little bit. Anything else you want to say, Michelle, before we get into some recommendations?
I will just say that I don't know if this is the time, but if you do get invited, the key thing is say yes, right? If you're even thinking about it, even if you're not 100% sure, don't wait to be 100% sure. These go fast. They're often lottery or first come, first serve basis. Just because you put your name in doesn't mean that you're going to be selected. They send it out to, it's like college admissions and they're trying to increase their yield rate. So you could put your name in and then immediately find out that, oh, you're on the waiting list. Well, and then if you're on the waiting list, there's a high chance actually that you depending on the school, that you'll get a call or an email that says a spot has opened up, and it might actually be for even just 2 weeks prior to the event. So it requires a lot of flexibility. So just kind of prepare yourself for that. For some of us processors, it's a leap of faith to kind of be ready to go at a moment's notice.
The other thing is, if you're like brand new and you have like 3 or 4 clients, it's going to be harder to get them because there are a lot of them that are looking at the return on your investment. Like it's return on your investment, right? They're not inexpensive. It's not just hotel, airfare, meals, but you got to think of all the planning that goes into this while they're paying staff salaries and benefits. Like there's a lot of expense. So even when I make nominations, like a lot of times they'll ask me a little bit, like, tell me about the person's caseload or whatever, or I'll lead with that. Like, this person's been doing it for X amount of years and this is their case. Like, that's kind of what they want to hear. So I would say if you're just starting out, you can still try it, but you're not going to have as much success, at least with the ones that I've attended. Like, they do a screening a little bit. And I understand that. I would if I were them as well, because, even when I make referrals, like I have some people I really, really like a lot that do this, but they're brand new. And I don't really refer those people because I know at the end of the day, they are going to go back and look at their budget and say, I did this and they don't necessarily measure them by matriculation, but even like applications or how many applications did I get? Sometimes you can build such a relationship with some of these people that they want to know when you send anybody to their school. And they're literally like, if anybody's coming, let me know. I'll try to meet them. I don't push that because I never want to sort of come across like you're crossing that line. Because some people are very, very, very sensitive to the perception of sort of paid advocacy and drawing a line really firmly. But some of them will reach out like once you've established that. And listen, if you're ever having anybody come by, like, let me know. And that's also a really good thing you can do, once you've done it to establish relationships. And then sometimes you can ask them, like, do you know of any other flyers for people that do them? Well, why don't we share some of the ones that you wanted to share? I think people would appreciate that, Michelle.
Well, I think one of the first ones I went on is Northern Arizona, and that is kind of a hike. Well, not for you actually, because you're in Arizona, so this is a perfect one. I would reach out to your regional admissions rep there because they usually do 2 a year, and they're fantastic. And it's a bit of a hike to get to. So I think that was one that I did in and of itself. But there are others. For example, I did a Sacred Heart one just this past year. And then I tacked on a number, that's in Connecticut. I tapped in a number of other schools. I rented a car with a colleague and we went and visited, I think, 5 other schools on the back end of that trip. And so really I had my airfare paid for, and then I was just paying for the car rental and the hotel rooms for the other schools that I wanted to visit. I mean, there's so many. I don't know if listing them is helpful, because then you know that they're out there and you can kind of reach out to your regional admissions rep and do some, or look for the counselors. Sometimes on their website, they'll have a sign up for the counselor's newsletter, or you can inquire if there's a counselor's newsletter. And if there is, then you might get notification. But so University of Tampa has one, Lake Forest, High Point, Baylor, Scranton, Jacksonville, Knox. I mentioned Sacred Heart. Your Ursinus has a fabulous one. Rhodes, Marquette is fantastic. I liked Marquette because, again, rent a car, super easy to pop over to Chicago and do several more college visits. Juanita, College of Worcester does that. And then also there's, maybe you can talk more about this one. It's the COWS tour. I think that's the Colleges of Ohio. And it's not every year, and it is a very coveted tour. I think if you Google it, you can find out how to get it's usually I don't know. I don't remember all of the schools that are on the COWS tour. Do you remember, Mark?
No, I should, but I don't.
It's like,
and I haven't done it, actually.
I think it might be Case Western, Ohio State, several of them, Denison, and only one of them will.
Ohio Wesleyan, are they on there?
Yes, I think so. And so one of the schools will be in charge for that year of kind of like preparing it. And whatever school that is, that's the page's contact sign-up form. You'll find it on their school website. So you kind of need to do a little sleuthing to find out and find out if they're going to do one that year and when the registration opens. And it's a budgetary issue for these colleges. So it's something that they may not do every year. Trinity in Texas has a fabulous one, and they rotate every other year. One year it'll be counselors for high schools, and then the next year it'll be IECs. I think this year is IECs.
Yeah.
University of Delaware.
This year it was supposed to be IECs, but what they ended up doing was having HECA host it there. And so they decided to do counselors, because I had some people that I was sending just to Justin for that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one's every other year. Redlands, who I'm working with right now, this is new for them, but they're doing every other year. They're doing school-based this spring, and then they're going to IEC next year. Sometimes you can get in through indirect ways. Like Roanoke has this thing where they have these little like coffee clutch kind of things where they have like Zoom coffee calls with counselors. And I was doing them for a while, and it's kind of cool. They like mail you like the cup and the coffee cup and, with the school. And then you get invited, to their fly-in as well. Great Books has one as well. There's both the Santa Fe and the
And then there's I think right now the Baltimore tour is going on. Isn't that right? The Baltimore schools. And then there's a crab crawl. Is that right?
Yeah.
You went on that, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the Baltimore one. That's the one that Great Books is kind of part of. They're in there, Annapolis. They're part of that in that rotation.
Every year there's what is called a sweet tea tour. I think they rotate
done that
in.
one.
Yeah. So these are ones that you pay a part of the expense to travel to the event. And then once you're there, the bus fare, I believe, is paid for.
Yeah. And we probably should differentiate. Like sweet tea is normally done through get out confused. It's through IECA normally. So normally some of them you need to be a member of, SACAC, NACAC, your ACAC, or that's who it will go to first versus versus just ones where they'll go directly through you. So there are two different types. Normally it's been my experience with those ACAC type ones. There's usually those ones have not been free, at least in the Southeast.
Right.
There's
and they cost a little bit more if you're not a member. So, for example, the Rocky Mountain tour costs a little bit less if you're a member of that association, and maybe $50 more if you're not.
Yeah, if I was starting out and I didn't have a lot of experience and I really wanted to do these, I actually would lead with like, I can pay part of the cost and see, you know, that would be a good way to break in a little bit too for some of them, because they are, you know, there's a lot of money they're putting onto that, and they are looking a little bit at what they spend. And I mean, it's just a thought, you know, because the value is there, right? If you get it, if you pay $300 and you get all this experience, there might be some people that might say yes to you. I really, really want to come. Also showing, just like Michelle said, it's like college admissions, like expressing your enthusiasm about why you want to visit. That can go a long ways as well. Like your enthusiasm about the school, or if you can lead. Like I've had several of my students are asking me about your school, and I really want to get there. Like these are all things that kind of ring, because they are going to be looking at through the prism of ROI, right? That's just going to be the mindset, right? Like I'm going to bring in counselors, and I'm hoping it's going to result in more applications. And so if you don't have sort of as many clients, or if it's not one that's where they've reached out to you and you want to sort of prove to them that, you know, I'm a good investment for you, that would be one way. One, express your enthusiasm and belief in the school from everything you know. And then also if you have like, boy, my students are really, really asking me about you. Like those are the kinds of things that will make you seem like someone that they can get a good return on their investment from.
And I will offer a strategy for that could result in a college fly-in invitation, but it's also a great way to get to know more about a college. So for example, I'm in an area where there are probably 5 or 6 high schools within a few miles, and I work with a lot of the kids in these high schools. And so I'll go on to their college and career website at this particular high school, and I will look at their calendar of events for the college and career, and I'll look and see which admissions officers are in town. Usually they coincide with a NACAC fair or something like that. And if there is someone from, say Trinity from Texas was visiting, I would look up my regional rep and I would email them and I would say, hey, I noticed that you're in town this time. I wonder if I could buy you a cup of coffee. And I would see if I could meet them, you know, near the high school at one of the times after they've done their presentation for the high school, and buy them a cup of coffee, learn more about the school, and then inquire about being on their fly-in list for the future. And it's just like students engaging with a college admissions rep. They see you, they know you, they have a face, and they actually associate your face with that regional area and those high schools.
You know, there's a couple other things I should bring up. You can sometimes plan your own events as well. Like I've done this, I haven't done it in a while, but I've done it in the past where I've reached out to a collection of schools and said I want to take a trip, and asked them if they'd cover my expenses. And, you know, and most of them say yes. Now, I've also known it tends to be more effective if you do it in a group. Like Julia, our co-host Julia, she has 2 really, really good friends. Lydia Dodgenay, who we've had on the podcast before. You longtime people may know she did one on law school admissions in Haverford Swarthmore. So Lydia and Mary, who she worked with at Haverford, and those 3 are like super close. They usually do like one a year where they go out. They did Connecticut schools 2 years ago. They did North Carolina schools this year. And you put together a little bit of a group, like 3 or 4 of us would love to come, and you reach out. Now, that is going to vary whether they're going to cover your costs and how they're, you know, whether they're just going to like accommodate you and do a lunch or sit you up at the VIP tour. It's really going to depend on the school, and there's a lot of factors involved in that. You don't always get your costs covered. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But it's another way to add value, is if like you're coming with 4 counselors together, you can kind of do your own one without having to go by the script of like published ones. But just know for those kinds of things, you're probably not going to have them pick up all the tab, but they might do some things that you wouldn't normally get. And then the other thing is there are some schools that just do them for individuals. Like I have people who have told me, let me know if you have somebody that wants to come by, because we'll like cover 2 of their hotel nights and maybe split the airfare. And so there's some that don't need the big group. They'll just do like a 1-person kind of VIP and cover partial costs.
Yeah, College of Worcester will pay for your hotel rental if you can get yourself out there.
Yes. Yeah, thankfully there's a board member that gave a lot of money toward IC fly-ins. And they're all different. Like I thought that was one of the better ones. I tend to like them. That one had 12 on it. I've done one with Smith that had 12 on it. I tend to like the small ones where they don't literally work you from like 6:30 a.m. to 11 at night. Like some of them, like they own you and they just like get ready to have no life. And then some of them give you some downtime. And I kind of tend to like those ones better, but they're all different.
The other ones that can be helpful are the ones that are usually tacked on either before or after a major conference event like NACAC, IECA, or HECA. Those typically don't cost. I haven't had to pay additional, or if they do, they're just a small amount. But you're on a bus again, and there are maybe 2 or 3 colleges sometimes involved in those sort of tack-on events. So those are things to look forward for.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Michelle, because pretty much every major conference does that. They pretty much all do, and I've never had to pay for any of them. They're going to be all around. They're going to be before and after the conference, usually. You do want to try to get in early, even that Michelle said a lot of times there are cancellations if you go on the wait list. But that's a great way to just have all the logistics handled for you if you're looking at going to a conference and you want to get in a bunch of visits if you have the time. A lot of times there could be, you could do 5-6 visits potentially on that. Now it could be 2 a day, 2 days, there's 4 and then 1 after. If you have like the time to add 2 days on the front end and 2 days on the back end. That's a great way to see school. So this was a great question. And thank you, Kara, for sending it in. Anything else you didn't say you want to say, Michelle?
No, I think, Kara, if you want to reach out to me, I'll share my list with you.
Yeah, there you go. And you know what, Kara, I have your email, so I'll connect you with Michelle, and I'll connect the two of you. Awesome. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Michelle, for being our guest.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Well, I just know from talking with you that you've done quite a lot of them. And I thought that when I looked at who's on our team, who's an IEC, who's done the most, I knew you had done more than others. And I'm glad I had you on. So thanks again.
It's one of those things that they build, the opportunities build up with time.
Yeah. And I can't recommend them more highly enough. I hardly ever say no. The only time I really say no is if I just can't really see myself getting somebody for that school, especially if it's a single one. Obviously, it's the same thing I tell my families when visiting. When you have multiple schools, you get multiple bites of the apple.
Yeah, but even if it's a school that you're not 100% sure that you'd have your student apply, look at what schools are in the area, because you just got to get there, and then it's a launch pad for more visits.
Yeah, and you have to be really careful with that. Like I spent 6 days in San Diego last September, and when you're in San Diego, of course you're going to go to University of San Diego, you're going to go to San Diego State, and you're going to go to UCSD, because those are like the big 3 schools there. But then there's this small little Christian school called Point Loma, and I remember saying, do I really want to go to Point Loma? I've been doing this for, that time it was like 24 years. I've never had a single kid go to Point Loma. And I said, well, I'm here. Let me go to Point Loma. And then next thing you know,
you were blown away.
Yeah, next thing you know, people are asking about Point Loma.
Yeah.
like that happens. So you have to be careful not thinking, I don't know if I'll ever have anybody for this school.
It's the most beautiful school. Oh my gosh. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like half the rooms have ocean views.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
All right, friends, let's transition to part 2 of 3 with Kev Sanders, helping break down the University of Utah.
And now it's time for our College Spotlight of the Week.
Friends, I hope you heard part 1 of my interview with Kev Sanders. If not, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. But in part 2, Kev talks about the amazing location of the Utah campus, and he explains all the opportunities that are available for students at the University of Utah. Then Kev tells us more about Salt Lake City and some of the ways students take advantage of what Salt Lake City has to offer. Kev describes to us the athletic school spirit at Utah. Kev goes into more detail about their top 10 programs at the University of Utah. And I asked Kev some areas that one of my families at Utah wishes things could be a little bit different. And Kev responds to these constructive criticisms. Listen and enjoy. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is something you've already alluded to, which is your location. So, when I think of Utah, I think of it as one of the leading outdoorsy schools. And I know that the students that I have either at Utah or that visit Utah, they'll speak to this right away, right? The combo, you've got the city, and then you've also got the mountains right there. Denver kind of offers that in some ways, but that's one of the things you'll hear about Utah. So can you talk about the various opportunities when it comes to activities for the nature lover, for the outdoorsy student that aren't that far away if they want to access them?
Yeah, I can talk about some of those things. It's funny, some of those things I thought I would move to this state and not be interested in. But the moment you realize how close you are to some of these things, you're like, I can't not take advantage of these. Within 30 minutes of our institution, we have seven world-renowned ski and snowboarding resorts that are really opportune for students. And I say that because we're going into the winter season and just had our first small snow of the season over the weekend. But we have one of the largest outdoor recreation centers on our campus in the West. And I say that's important because when your student comes here, you're probably like, well, if they want to take advantage of all these different things, I'm going to have to buy them the equipment. Now, this outdoor recreation center has everything you need to go camping, from your tents to the pans you need to cook with and everything like that. They have all of your backpacking equipment if you're wanting to take backpacking trips and things like that. But then when it comes to the snow, they've got everything you need for skiing and snowboarding as well. And talking to some of our tour guides, they bring their parents to the outdoor recreation center and they get them outfitted with everything they need to go skiing under $100, just for the equipment itself. Outside of that, on our campus, we have the hiking trails or the biking trails that you don't have to leave campus to find. They're right here available for students to take use of. But then, like I said, you've got 30 minutes, you're up into some of those resorts that are amazing. They've got some of the best powder that you could find in terms of skiing and snowboarding. I think from that as well, of course, you've got the seven. I like to call them the seven wonders sometimes, but they're the national parks, Bryce Canyon and some of Zion and some of those other ones that are some amazing opportunities for students to see some things they may not have ever thought about going to look at. I know for me, going to see some of these things, I often refer to them as the screensavers that you see on your computer that you never think you're going to be able to, find and see yourself. It is those huge, majestic things that we have surrounding us. I mean, outside of the outdoorsy things, going down into the city, we've got an NHL team, we've got an NBA team, and then we've got a Broadway as well. So you've got a lot of things, whether it's entertainment, athletic wise, to the arts and music. You've got that in the front door of campus, and in the back door you've got all the nature and all the things that you could ever want to take advantage of in terms of the outdoors and outdoor living and activity.
And Kate, you've already touched on some of this and NBA teams and all the things you mentioned, but tell us more about Salt Lake City. What would you want a listener to know who's never been to Salt Lake City? Tell us a little bit more about Salt Lake City.
Oh yeah, Salt Lake City is a really interesting place to be. Not for the perceptions that you think. A lot of people associate Utah and Salt Lake City with, the Mormon Church, the Church of Latter-day Saints. But when you get to Utah, you realize they do have a presence in the city. But really, when you get here, it's this city full of open opportunity and diverse cultural. I don't know a very diverse and culturally inclusive space, right? And that's not what's often shown on the news. That's not the stereotype or, the thought that you usually get with Utah. But I think it's very special to come into a city like this, which is not the biggest city that you'll ever see, but it's very bustling in terms of opportunity, not only for the community here, but the students on campus. And not to bring it back to the University of Utah, but what I find to be so special is my first few years here with the university was doing outreach and community engagement. And so when we would go to these events, in the community, you see U of U Health, you see the Moran Eye Center that's run through the university. You see some of the health centers coming down and doing these kind of preemptive healthcare things for the community and being involved in that way. So coming to Salt Lake City, I had no idea that I was going to be in a city that was so caring, not only about, you know, people or persons, but the culture that comes with that person. I moved here realizing there are, African heritage festivals, there are, Greek festivals, Italian festivals. People here are widely selling what you would find or think you would find in Salt Lake City or the state of Utah. But even me being a queer Black man here living in Salt Lake City, I've been able to find community in ways that I never thought. And I think that's what makes Salt Lake City special is it is this little bubble that sits within this state that has its own perception. And I think Salt Lake City beats that perception by far with all the things that it offers, right? Whether it is cultural things that you'd like to be more involved in, whether that is the arts and the history and the things like that. I think Salt Lake City just beats perception and offers a lot of opportunity to people that you wouldn't expect.
Now, another thing I think of the University of Utah is I think of it as a place that oozes athletic school spirit. And, that's something that a lot of students are looking for. They want that energy. They want, they want fun. They want to go get a good education. They want to be gainfully employed, but they see the big games on TV and people going crazy. And Utah, I have never been to the University of Utah, so I will tell you that. I'm speaking from someone who has not had a chance to visit yet. But even myself, I'll personally say, like, I've seen like rabid energy coming from your fan base at football games and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about this? Do you think that's a fair assessment to say that is something that Utah offers?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment to say. And sorry about my camera. I don't know what's going on with my computer and that camera, but no, I think that is a very fair assessment to say. I think we do have a really huge athletic culture here on campus and in the community as well. I don't know if it matters to your listeners, but our mighty Utah student section was ranked #1 by Taco Bell a few years ago, as well as ESPN. But the students on campus, of course, football is a really big one for them. But we also have our women's Red Rock gymnastics team, which are huge across the nation and hold some of those national titles and have for several years in the past. But I think it's huge and it's an offering that I think all students should take advantage of. It might not be your thing. It might not be the thing that you're doing every time we have a game. But for me, it's the easiest way for you to make connections on this campus. Joining the Must, I think it's $60. It gets you a ticket to every home football game as well as our student tailgate as well. So we're going to feed you well, and then we're going to get you to the game where you can find some really good entertainment. Now, the Must doesn't only support football. We have a Must section for every athletic team on this campus. So if your football's not your big thing, there is a Must community for our lacrosse players, right? There is a Must community for track and field. So you're going to be able to see that as a student here on campus. But if you were to ever visit, Utah and you're near one of those football games or one of those big Red Rocks gymnastics games, the city is painted red and you'll feel some of that spirit seeping through.
So, Kev, let's talk about some of the strong programs. You've mentioned a few, but I'm just going to mention some programs I know to be strong and have you add a few words. The first one I'm going to talk about, it's very rare that I go at least a year where I don't have some student who's very interested in dance, ballet, or even other types of dance, but definitely ballet. This year's no exception. This year it's a Southern California student, but most years it's somebody that's going to look at Utah for the strength of your dance program. Say a few words about that. And we've got quite a few here. So maybe if you could keep your thoughts to under 60 seconds.
I can do that. Dance program for the last time I checked was ranked number 13 in the nation. That's really a surprise for people. And how I tell people we've been able to garner a program like this is having something like Ballet West right in our backyard, right? So we have these professionals connected to career spaces, also on campus teaching in our BFA programs like dance, like ballet, like theater. So you've got some really good opportunity to get some active professional help in terms of being a student on our campus and learning some of these industries and professions and arts for that matter.
I'm usually, and our listeners know, a little cynical when people say, oh, our school is ranked this number because, there's a million different rankings and they're all over the place and they're highly subjective and they depend on the formula and all of that. But normally when people do it, they almost always pick one that's like very favorable to them,
Yeah.
And actually, most people that I know in the ballet world do not think of Utah as 13. They think of it as like absolutely in a handful of the top programs in the country. So it is nice to have someone who's going to do that, at least be like very, very, very modest.
Oh
So,
yes, yeah.
yeah,
I'll give you the number, but I mean the program's amazing. And
yeah.
talking to some of those students and hearing the opportunity, it's just amazing at what's presented to them based on the skill they're able to cultivate here on campus.
So let's talk about engineering. It's one you've already alluded to, but why don't you highlight specific branches within engineering that you regard as, some of your strongest?
Yeah, absolutely. Mechanical engineering is one that I love, love, love talking about. In 2023, Forbes listed us having the best invention, well, the invention of the year, which was the bionic leg, which was really cool to, read stories about and listen to the students that were able to be a part of this. This is not just faculty and staff doing research, but this is students also being able to get into the lab and do some of this really unique work with engineering. Engineering on our campus has taught me a lot of things and just understanding and learning from these folks. So electrical engineering is another big one on our campus too. It was recently explained to me as your cell phone, right? If you want to work with cell phones and you want to know how to improve those systems and operating things, electrical engineering is for you. And that's kind of the things they work in. So you've got a lot of room to work with when it comes to engineering. I tell students, if you're coming to the University of Utah and you're thinking engineering, think about the focus that you also want to look into. We have engineering as a college, but what's going to be more helpful to you in your start is really going to understanding what focus you want to go into and having a strong start there.
No, sounds great. What about health sciences? One you've also mentioned already, but what do you want to highlight there for strong programs?
Yeah, health sciences is really unique on our campus. I mentioned it before in some of my community access work. These students aren't just learning in the classroom and some of their, experimental labs on campus. They're actually getting out into the community and providing some of these services to the community while also learning, right? And I think that's really special. But in terms of health sciences, our College of Health Science or College of Health, excuse me, has 48 active clinics and labs here on campus. And those clinics and labs aren't just for students and faculty to work together, but they're there to provide service to the community as well. So the students are learning in the classroom, they're getting that experiential opportunity outside of the classrooms in these clinics and these labs, but they're also able to give back to the community that this university is a part of. And I think that's really special for health sciences. They also have, I want to say it's over $100 million in open grant funding right now that different faculty members and students are working through in terms of research right now. So a lot going on in health sciences, and that's one of our more popular colleges as well.
Great. What can you tell me about communications? I know it's another strong program.
Yeah, communications is another strong program. They have, I believe it is 3 or 4 specialties that are really unique in there: strategic communication, journalism, CommShare, which is a mix of science, health, emergency and risk communication as well. So how are you communicating all of these scientific things both to the field, but to the community as well? And then we have communication studies. What I find to be really cool is the university always finds ways to give students experiential opportunities. We were just talking about, athletics and sports. We host ESPN Game Day on our campus. I think in the last 2 years, they've hosted it once every football season. They actually take some of our communication students out to that to get to see what that setup looks like, how they're running this. So they get some of that experiential learning with something that our students are already excited to be happening here on our campus, but those comm students get that extra look into that day.
What about entrepreneurship? That's another program that looks to be quite strong from my research.
Yeah, entrepreneurship is another big one that's coming out of our Eccles School of Business. And like I said, students can come on our campus and just study entrepreneurship. They have living and learning spaces that would also help these students. That comes out of our David Eccles School of Business. Now you can come and you can study entrepreneurship just as a major by itself. One of the most interesting things is we've added a lot to our business students to be able to learn and have community outside. Year before last, we opened the Lassonde entrepreneurship building. And so it's a residence hall, but it's also a maker space in the bottom. So students can open actual storefronts, test out marketing with student population, faculty population here on campus. Really cool. We brought some counselors to campus last week, and we actually got to test out a student's energy drink here on campus that they have actually gotten to open. Last semester, they had a storefront where they were selling this, but now they've taken it into the real world and they're actually selling this online now. And outside of just that being a major, it's a minor that you can add to almost anything here on campus because, like I said earlier, those entrepreneurial ideas can come from anywhere. And our entrepreneurial folks on campus have made it a point to make sure that that knowledge to make those ideas successful are available to all students.
Great. What about accounting? That's another one that I know has a very strong reputation.
Accounting, which is also coming out of the David Eccles School of Business. I think for a lot of our business majors, I found that they take a deeper look than many other bachelor's programs do, right? So you're not doing that base level thing in terms of just income accounting or asset accounting. You're really getting into like business mergers and what that looks like, tax strategy, and some merger and acquisition strategy, business transaction accounting, and stuff like that. So you're taking a deeper dive into what these fields and what these majors mean than just doing some of that base level, getting you prepared for a job.
And talk to me about experimental and research psychology. What can you tell me about that program?
It's a big one on our campus. And I think because it has that experiential piece to it, right? So we're actually using data and things like that to understand psychology of the mind. But then we're also doing a lot of research in the field of psychology as well. That's connected to the College of Health as well. You know, a lot of those people are connected and building research opportunities together because we know those two things partner. And so that's a huge major on our campus for both of those reasons.
Tell me about video game development.
Video game development is one of my favorites to talk about. That is one that I do like to brag on. We are ranked #1 in the nation in terms of games. What's really unique about our games program is I think they do a really good job at making sure your student is going to be able to step off the stage at graduation and into a role with the company and actually doing the fun stuff that they have, been working towards. One success story that I like to talk about, the Harry Potter game that came out a few years ago, from my understanding, and I haven't found a way to corroborate this yet, but 60% of those gaming developers came from the University of Utah, right, from the gaming program. So they put in a lot of work to get that game up, ready, the testing of it all. It's funny, I actually got my copy of the game from a student who was working with the creation of the game, and he said he tested it so much he had no want and to actually play it. So he gave me his free copy. But I think that is just a success story of these students coming to the institution, wanting to be prepared in these certain realms of knowledge, and then being able to immediately take that and do some of the cool things that they've been wanting to.
And the last one I want to ask you about is nursing. What can you tell me about nursing?
Nursing one is a big one. Nursing is a huge draw because we do have some accelerated programs and some BSN programs, I believe, as well. And so getting into those programs, we do have a lot of students that want to do this, but this is a rigorous program that is putting students to work almost immediately when they get here on campus. And so it's a big one. We have the UXL program as well. So if you've got nursing credentials or certifications, you can join this program to finish out and receive that BSN as well. But we do have a program that helps students get the RN and then get to the BSN as well. So a lot of opportunity when it comes to nursing. But yeah, I think that's another really, really strong and popular one that we hear nationwide on the road when we're recruiting.
Now, was there any program I never mentioned that you feel, I got to give this program some love? You never mentioned it, and it's also really strong. And it's okay if there's not. We covered a lot of them.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you covered the ones that we get most questions about and that people have a lot of interest in.
No problem. So our listeners know me, and I told you this, Kev, I can't just do a softball infomercial commercial here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm almost going to ask a couple tough questions. So I was talking to a family of mine I'm working with in the Pacific Northwest very recently. They have a student at Utah who's very happy, by the way. No regrets about his decision, so all good. But there are a couple of things that they wish would be a little different. One is the fact that only about 1 in 7 students live on campus, and it feels a little more of a commuter, and it can be hard to get campus housing. And he's fine, he's got it, and he's set, but that's his perception. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting perception, one that when I, talked about that aggressive recruitment strategy, getting in front of some of the perceptions, that's one of them, right? Because I think years ago, that perception might be true. And when I say years ago, I'm talking 10 plus years. The university has moved towards, and I think the 2002 Olympics helped us do that, making sure we have housing on campus for students. For the last 2 years, we've opened new residence halls, the Lassonde Entrepreneurship Hall. We've got the, I'm blanking on the name, Epicenter, which is another residence hall. And then we're going to be opening another one this fall with 1,400 beds. And so right now, the university is able to guarantee all freshmen a housing. And so that's a unique opportunity for us to be able to do. But I think the thing that should be noted about our state is that 53% of our students are from Utah, right? A lot of those students are from Salt Lake City, are from, local areas. So they do want to get off campus and they do want to go see their family. There are a few parts of Utah that are becoming minority majority, and, the Hispanic population is growing. And we know what family and community means to those students in those communities. And so we do oftentimes see students leaving campus on the weekends, but I wouldn't say it's a ghost town, and I wouldn't say it matches that of a commuter school. There's always stuff to do on the weekends and at nights here on campus. Just last week, we had our Dino-Vember event where students get in those inflatable dinosaur costumes and they see who can climb our rock wall the fastest, right? And so that is a perception that's out there. From my standpoint, I'd say it's not true. Right? Students are going home on the weekends, not to say every weekend. I mean, in terms of finding housing on our campus, your student is guaranteed housing. But if they want, that specific choice in housing, the single room, or maybe they only want, one roommate and a specific person, it's just about being on top of the housing process to make sure you can have those advantages that you want. But right now, the university guarantees all incoming freshmen housing on campus. And then what I suggest for students that are going into their sophomore, junior, senior year wanting to stay on campus, just be on top of the housing process. That way, those rooms that are open and available for you, you can make use of.
All right, great. So the expansion of housing is going on, and so you're addressing the issue. Friends, this concludes part 2 of 3 of my interview with Kev Sanders from the University of Utah. We hope you join us next week for the final part. Friends, episode 600 is on Monday, and you guys know I'm stoked. It's my favorite episode of the year. It's going to be special. Our listening family sent in messages and tips that have helped them, that they want others to benefit from. And I tell you, we really, really got some good ones. I'm also going to include a few tips that some of the people that I interviewed, thought leaders, shared at the end when I asked them any tips for students or parents. And that's the entire episode. That's it. Just all of us as a listening family, crowdsourcing our knowledge, helping each other. So I hope you tune in for that special episode. And friends, on our last episode, I shared a quote from the great C.S. Lewis and dealt with handling setback. And I know decisions are still coming in. So many schools came out. Just to name a few in the last few days. McAllister came out, Case Western Reserve, Howard. I could go on and on. So many decisions have come out just today and yesterday. And while many got good news, others didn't. So don't ever forget the words of C.S. Lewis. Hardships often prepare ordinary people for extraordinary destiny. See you on Monday, friends, for the Big Enchilada 600. And by the way, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, as this episode actually lands on Christmas Day. And that's our show. Big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid.website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK hit the orange button and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stylionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.